Legion's brand new Galaxy class flagship battlecruiser is right here. Its masterpiece for 2023, the Legion 9i, finally here, and I've been waiting for it the whole year. If John Wick had to choose a laptop for himself, this would probably be it. It's got proper assassin class looks, forged carbon fiber like you get on supercars, and it feels bulletproof. It feels and looks amazing. But was the 9i created just to undermine the Legion 7 and give Lenovo an opportunity to jack up the prices? Or is it a real contender for being one of the most extreme, slim and powerful gaming laptops out there? I think the Alienware X16 is the closest competition that the 9i has. It is my intent to compare the features together and figure out objectively which one is the better choice. So arguably the two titans of the thin and powerful gaming laptop realm right here. Stick around to find out which one is better for you. Before I move ahead, I do hope that you enjoy my video and find the content to be useful. If so, please do consider subscribing to my channel. It means a lot to me and it goes a far way to encourage me to keep creating new content. I got the more snobbish specs here on the 9i, an Intel i9-13980HX with 24 cores going up to 5.6 GHz, paired with the NVIDIA RTX 4090 that has 16 GB of GDDR6 VRAM and has a 256-bit memory bus, taking up to 175 watts of power. Naturally, that includes 25 watts of dynamic boost. I have 32 GB of physical memory or RAM that goes up to 400 MHz. Now technically you can change the RAM in this down the line, but to do that you'll have to obviously open it, take out the motherboard, flip it over and then do the deed. So you can do it, but check in with Lenovo because I don't know if that would void your warranty. Moving on, I also got two 1TB drives in here with a RAID 0 configuration and the crown jewel of the 9i, that 3.2K mini LED display. It is absolutely gorgeous. Now you may have noticed that I have not mentioned liquid cooling so far, and I've got good reason for it, and that will become apparent later in the video. All of this would set you back close to, wait for it, 6,000 Canadian dollars. This includes tax. This is the retail price on Lenovo's own website. Maybe down the line you'll get some discounts. You could also configure this with the RTX 4080, which could help you save about $500-600. Now for comparison, the X16 I have here is slightly humble. It's got a 14-core i9-3900H CPU paired with an RTX 4080 and also has 32 GB of RAM, which is soldered on, so you definitely can't replace that. And it has a mere QHD Plus display or a 2.6K display, and that's just a standard IPS panel. 300 nits of brightness, no biggie. For reference, I saw the 4090 variant of this on Dell's website for about 5,400 Canadian dollars with tax. In terms of unboxing, Legion did update the packaging a bit to make it more eco-chic, and the packaging was a bit larger this time around, and the reason for that is because they included an additional 140 watts Type-C charging cable. Legion intends it to help you keep mobile and not lug around that 330 watt charging adapter that you also obviously get gallium nitride. It has a similar size to that of the Alienware X16's adapter. You also get a little toolkit to help you replace the WASD keys with ceramic pastel shaded keys. I have yet to warm up to that concept. So the build, 90% recycled magnesium in die-cast carbon black, but has this really nice soft matte finish to it. It feels pretty premium, and even when you slide your hand across the lid, you can feel the slight bumps in there, that slight imperfection that makes you feel like this is the real deal forged carbon. It's nice. It has a thickness ranging from 0.75 inches to 0.89 inches compared to the Alienware's 0.73 inches through and through. So the 9i has already lost the thickness battle, but the X16 does have a more prominent back end. I also think purely in terms of design, the 9i is closer to the Gen 7 Legion 7 than to the Gen 8 Legion 7. Or maybe it's something in between the two, I don't know. I'm telling you, this year they just made the Legion 7 intentionally worse in design just so that they could introduce the 9. I do suspect a bit of marketing at play here. We definitely are paying much more this time around to get the same features that we used to get last year. Just saying. This also weighs in at 2.55 kilograms, and the Alienware is 100 grams heavier. It's not noticeable, but it's still pretty impressive that this thing has liquid cooling and all of that fancy hardware and engineering, and it's still not very heavy. Well, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, so it would be great to hear from you guys. Which one would you prefer, at least in terms of looks and design specifications? Make no mistake, the X16 definitely feels and looks slimmer next to the 9i. So for now, let's give a point to the Legion for its looks and to the X16 for its dimensions and thinness. In terms of RGB flexing, I think from the backside at least, the Tron ring on the X16 gives it definitely more presence in comparison to the Legion, despite them thankfully adding an RGB strip on the back. It does look nice and it's a little bit more discreet than the X16. There's nothing wrong with a bit of restraint in your RGB flex. And on the front, you get that whole light bar up in front, which also spills over a little bit to the side. So that's got more presence. The X16 has a trick up its sleeve with that RGB trackpad. To me, that feels a little bit more unique, you know. The software to control the RGB in the X16 though is pretty primitive, very basic, but it's not like the 9i is far better. I've always praised Lenovo's Vantage software, but it's starting to feel dated. It's almost like the software cannot handle this caliber of hardware. It's falling behind, especially compared to the RGB configuration offered by other manufacturers like MSI, Razer, ROG. This pales in comparison. The marketing material even mentioned AI synced RGB, and I was really excited to find what that was all about, but to my disappointment, it's all the same. If anything, it feels a little bit jittery this time around in comparison to the Legion 7. I don't know what's up. Maybe it's a defect in my unit. You'll also observe that the lights on this side and this side were not working, so definitely a kind of a defect. I reached out to Lenovo as well and they don't have a solution so far. Even looking at the performance dashboard in Vantage, you'll see the VRAM bar is in gigahertz, clocking over 9 gigahertz. That's probably not the VRAM memory speed either then, so I don't know what's up. We still get things like battery conservation modes and like an esports mode in which you can switch between sRGB, Adobe, DCI-P3 color configuration, can change the screen response times. You also get a custom mode to mess with things like CPU short-term and long-term power limits, CPU temp limits, dynamic boost limits, GPU temps limits, etc. You even get a mode to boost the Wi-Fi signal through some internal orientation trickery. I did not get a chance to test that out thoroughly though. Anyway, another fault was that whenever I set up the configuration in Spectrum software, it doesn't stick. Whenever I change the profiles, it just reverts back to its default settings. Even if I forgive and forget the fault in the 9i, it's just ridiculous that for both of these laptops at extremely high price points, the RGB configuration is just so piss poor. So I'm not giving points to either of them for this one. At this price point, it's just unacceptable. Sorry. Like the Alienware, most of the sides are just vents, although the one on the right is just half a vent. Half of it is sort of blocked away because on the right side you have the CPU and that just has one fan, and on the left side you get two fans to cool the GPU. In comparison, the X16 has functional vents because it's got two fans on each side. Unlike the X16, we do get a few ports on the Legion. There is a Type-C and Type-A port on the right, both USB 3.2 Gen 1 along with that webcam kill switch for those privacy enthusiasts. And you also get a full-size SD card reader on the left and a headphone jack as well, albeit a little bit towards the rear. That works for me because then the wire doesn't get tangled up in my mouse because I'm right-handed. On the back we get an HDMI 2.1 port, two Thunderbolt 4 ports, one more Type-A USB 3.2 Gen 1 port, and a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet jack. Overall, this is much better than what you get on an X16, which only has two Type-A ports and two Type-C ports and no Ethernet, no SD card. So the Legion scores here again. The Legion has a glass touchpad. It's very accurate, nothing wrong with it, perfectly nice to use, but because it needs a lot of room up top for the vents, it feels a little bit crammed down here. So there is a bit less room for your wrists to rest on in comparison to the X16, which has, I think, maintained a sort of balance. The vents don't take up as much space, and as a result, the trackpad is a little bit taller. And obviously, you can't resist the RGB thing in this touchpad either. But I have to clarify, operating the trackpad on this, nothing wrong with it at all. I found it perfectly comfortable. But what I didn't like was that the travel distance for the clicks a bit longer than I want, not as tight. The clicks are loud, and even when you tap on it, there's sort of like a rattle after that. Doesn't feel very premium to me. So several reasons for me not to side with the Legion on this. Point to the X16. The keyboard on the Legion feels extremely nice to type on. It's got 1.5 millimeters of key travel, and the X16 actually has 1.8 and is also sporting mechanical switches, but somehow this strange feeling on this keyboard, the way it bottoms out like the thumbs at the end. It feels nice, it feels very comfortable, it feels like you could type on this for hours and not suffer any fatigue. The clickiness on the X16 is good, but this is nice. I definitely prefer this over the Cherry MX switches here. And I did write all of my observations for the review of this laptop on this keyboard as well. So I had no issues with this. I have to say, for me, best laptop keyboard I've used this year. As a bonus with the Legion, you also get those flexible shortcuts. So function Q will help you change the performance. Function R is going to help you change the refresh rate. You can also turn the lights on the logo on or off, or the lights on the rear ports on or off. That's pretty good because the Legion 7 didn't have that anymore. And you can also switch between your RGB profiles using the function spacebar shortcut. It's pretty user friendly. It's also not a bad idea for you to have your trackpad in here for your macros and for your number crunching, but the X16 does look a little bit cleaner because it doesn't have one. I also should admit that the RGB brightness on the 9 is better than what we get on the Alienware. Again, I'm good with that. I don't want it to be that bright anyway. Webcam, well, both of them seem to have the same 1080p sensor. No major differences in quality or lighting. I do think the 9 has a broader field of view. Plus, it comes with a privacy switch. Again, good for the criminals out there. And as a bonus, you also get Tobii Horizon on this for head tracking, which can give you day-to-day productivity and gaming benefits. Not very popular with games so far, but it's still nice to have. Point to the Legion. Biometrics, well, I'm just glad the 9 has it because again, they got rid of it in the 7. Lenovo has continued with its fingerprint login baked into the power button. It has the same look and feel as the Slim 7 Gen 8. It works as it has in the previous Legions. It lacks the convenience of facial login, which the X16 has. The X16 login experience is a bit faster as well. It's probably a matter of personal preference, but I think largely people out there prefer facial login. Good to hear from you guys on that. So point to the X16. Back to the screen, it is display royalty. It does not get better than a 3.2K mini LED display that has a brightness of up to 1200 nits. It is especially nice with hardware like this to back up that resolution. 4K would probably be overkill in this size, so 3.2K is the right amount of crazy. It has a 165Hz refresh rate with a 3 millisecond response time. The screen also has pretty thin bezels. The inside edges are a bit curved to give it like that soft and modern look. The 16:10 display means there's not a thick chin underneath. HDR gaming is properly real on the 9. It's not a gimmick. 1200 nits of peak brightness at over 1500 local dimming zones is no joke. Sure, there's a bit of blooming here and there, but it's not very noticeable. I've had an absolute fantastic experience in this. The blacks really do reach near OLED experience, and creators rejoice. Discovers 100% Adobe RGB, 100% DCI-P3, and 100% sRGB, and it supports NVIDIA G-Sync. I will say though, there's a bit of a honeymoon period with this display, and let me explain. At times it can feel a bit much. Like you need to keep dark mode on this, and even if you do, you're browsing through pages and suddenly something comes up with a lot of white content, it will gouge your eyes out. It is so bright, it is a bloody torch. Found myself constantly bringing the brightness down, and this actually did give me a headache. I'm not dramatizing, I promise. The X16 in comparison just has 300 nits of brightness. It's a QHD display. It just sounds sad and gloomy in comparison. I get it, but it still has the same level of color accuracy. You know what? Unpopular opinion, but this display is good enough for me. Sure, images are definitely going to look sharper, and the HDR content looks amazing. It has a different feel to it altogether. I love it. But the X16 is comfort food on a Sunday afternoon. It's easy on the eyes. And this is spicy chili wings. You can't have spicy chili wings all the time. A mini LED system on your TV is nice because it's at a distance. This is always in your face. From a user experience standpoint, even with a lower resolution, lower brightness, SDR content, sure there's a difference, but it's good enough for me. If you're okay with using this laptop out in the sun with your sunglasses on, looking swell, this is the right way to go. Despite my simpleton views, obviously the point goes to the Legion for this. I'll keep it brief on the sound. It's got 2 speakers, both 2 watts. They sound slightly better than the Legion 7 I had tested. The only thing I can say about the speakers in here, they have the ability to produce sound, and that's it. They're average. You do get the dynamic software, which has lots of customization, which is good, but all of this pales in comparison to that 6-speaker setup on the X16. Like, the volume on the X16 is so loud. It has the Dolby software to tune up the settings. It lacks customization of dynamic software, but the X16 is probably one of the best sound I've heard on a gaming laptop this year. Point clearly goes to the X16 on this. More sad news for the Legion 9 in terms of battery life, unfortunately. It does have a 99 watt-hour capacity, but when I put it through my standard battery test, which is streaming at 1080p video, Top Gear obviously, I dropped the refresh rate to 60 Hz. I switched over to integrated GPU, Intel's own GPU inside, so that 4090 was switched off. I turned down the brightness to around 200-300 nits, lowered the volume as well, had a few tabs open on the side for like light browsing, had the RGB lights turned off, and I just got 2 hours and 15 minutes. It's probably the worst result I've gotten in a gaming laptop this year. This could be something to do with the defect I have on this particular unit, but that's what I got. In terms of thermals, we obviously have very high expectations from the 9i, and why wouldn't we? It's been banking heavily on being the first in providing an integrated liquid cooling solution in here, and they've also added a third fan in here, first for Legion. That liquid cooling though only comes to life at 84 degrees, and in my experience, whenever I put this through heavy loads, the fans would scream and shout and would keep the temperature below 84 degrees regardless of whatever I did to it. I had overclocked it, I messed with the custom settings. In the end, I eventually ended up even choking the vents a little bit, and I enjoyed it, but to no result. I hit close to 86 degrees on the GPU and the liquid cooling did not come on. How do I know that? Is because they have provided an additional light in the back port to show you if liquid cooling is on or off. I never saw it turn on. Chances are there could be a little bit of a defect here, even with a time spy stress test, which basically does the time spy test 20 times for 20 minutes. It did not pass. I did it 3 times and it failed all 3 times. And what the test does, it checks variations in your frame rate. So if it varies a lot, means it's hitting thermal throttling or it's unable to keep the power up consistently. So the first time I saw a not pass on a laptop this year. Even when it's idle, when the fans are at a low RPM, it's still audible. I can still hear it. The X16, ever since it's been sitting here, I haven't heard a peep from it. It's doing nothing, and yet the fans keep turning on and off. I've also yet to see any real benefit come out of that LA2 AI chip. I was using it on balance mode. That's when you get to checkbox it in the Vantage settings. What my observation was that in games, it would just switch from balance mode to performance mode with the ring turning red. And that was annoying because that would just ramp up the fans again. I want liquid cooling to work and I want the fans to stay chill. Furthermore, compared to the X16, the wrist areas I felt were more susceptible to becoming a bit warm. I can feel the right side at least feel a little bit warm. This one though, nothing. Room temperature. When we compare the internals, the GPU tends to run hotter in the X16 when compared to the 9. Do you know what? I don't want to be apologizing to people in the room for the loud fans all the time. So this might sound strange, but I'm going to give the point to the X16 on this one. From a user standpoint, it just works better for now at least. So let's talk performance. What good is all that hardware for? In 3D Mark's time spy test, I scored 20,489 points with dedicated GPU and the GPU overclock maxed out. This is about 14% higher than the X16 with that RTX 4080. Does not sound all that much. But let's also check out the performance across a few games. I've mostly used the built-in benchmarks within the game so that it's easier for you to compare. You will see up on the screen now the average FPS results from them. I generally use the maxed out quality settings across all the games, and I did benchmarks for both the QHD and the 3.2K resolutions. QHD because I wanted to compare with the X16. I have also avoided any upscaling trickery like DLSS or frame generation to better gauge raw performance. So you'll realize that on average you can get a 21% increase in performance with the 4090 over the X16 with the 4080. It's up to you to decide if you want to pay $800 to $1,000 more to get that performance bump, but even within the Legion, you can pay $600 more. But there's a certain charm of walking around with a desktop grade 4070 and i9 in your backpack in a format like this. So I don't know if that appeals to you. I have really enjoyed playing games on this at the 3.2K resolution at very acceptable, actually better than acceptable frame rates. And I think that's a good way to summarize the benefit of the 4090 over the 4080. So with the 4090, you get to play your games at 3.2K resolution without noticeably losing any frames. So with that, if we tally up the scores, it seems that Legion has won it by a point. And even if I put some weights next to the scores based on my own personal preferences, the Legion still wins. I did not throw value for money in the mix because, well, there is no value for money in either. They're very expensive. For all intents and purposes, the 9i deserves to stand tall amongst the titans of the gaming laptop realm. For me personally though, I did suffer from a little bit of buyer's remorse. As a casual gamer, I cannot appreciate the additional frames over the 4080. To me, it's the same level of fluidity and I just can't seem to turn that to my advantage. Nor was I able to keep the mini LED display at its full brightness, nor was I playing everything at HDR, nor do all games support HDR. For example, Starfield didn't support HDR, nor did I have any day-to-day applications in which I would utilize that 13980HX processor to its full potential. You have to understand, this is not about if you can afford it. You have to be able to fully appreciate what it has to offer. So that's it for me, guys. Thank you all very much for taking the time to watch my video. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please do consider liking and subscribing. I'm looking forward to reviewing a laptop that's on the way. I'm very excited about it. It's an Asus ZenBook with an RTX 4080. Feels like that's a device that is made entirely for me. Again, do subscribe and keep an eye out for that. Take care, guys. Hope to see you next time.